as humans, we're very concerned about what people think. Mm-hmm. And so it is a superpower if you're like, I don't really care. We are live. Eddy Roche, cheers, man.
Cheers, brother.
Welcome to the Sphere Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for welcoming me on. Happy to be here.
Yeah, you know, gosh, I think back, like, this has been coming for a few years now.
Yeah.
Right? Like you and I talking about doing podcasts together. At
Yes.
one point, I think we talked about co-hosting a podcast.
Yes.
And then now we are here right now and you're on the Sphere Podcast.
It's awesome, brother. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but I wanted to quickly say, we're both very entrepreneurial kinds of people. Like we were friends at a young age and then we're kind of doing our own thing in our own separate walks, but you've always been so consistently supportive and positive and encouraging. And I want to thank you for that. And I just want to, like, it's no surprise to see you now going down this entrepreneurial path yourself.
Yeah,
right?
Thanks,
like
man.
it's the most supportive and encouraging people who then tend to sort of go and explore those avenues themselves.
Thanks, man.
So yeah, it's cool to see you doing the podcast. Happy to be here. Like, hopefully I can provide something that's worth, some value for the listeners. But yeah, very cool thing that you're doing. You've got an insane network that you've built over a decade in real estate. Like, I'm very excited about all the podcast episodes that you're going to record and the wonderful wisdom that you'll be sharing. So I'll be tuning in for sure.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
That means a
I'm
lot.
kind of underqualified to be here.
No,
I know you're rolling
No, you're not. Okay, so
Bro,
for
we're going
the
to talk about
audience,
that dinner
by the
that
way.
you took me to, by the way. I don't mean to be hijacking the
No,
podcast,
what were you going to say?
You invited me to, this is Sean's network. For those of you who don't know listening, Sean is just wheeling, dealing, just crushing it as a real estate broker here in Los Angeles, has an insane network of all kinds of business moguls. And you invited me once to a networking dinner of some sort. It was at some massive, crazy mansion in the hills of LA. It was all these middle-aged guys and I'm hitters, serious hitters, billionaires, people talking about this and that. I did 100 million. Everyone did an introduction. Remember we went around the table and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, why the did Sean invite me to this? It comes to me and I'm like, oh, I'm building a gym. I've got a fitness community and everyone's like, what? But that's just you. You're so encouraging and supportive. And you've always been like, mate, I know, you're going to do something really special one day. I want you to come and meet these people. I'm really happy to have you here. And you were so proud to introduce me. And it's just dude, those moments really mean a lot when you're coming up, when no one wants to give you time. No one wants to give you any appreciation or love or any respect. And you've always been so consistently respectful of my journey from the very earliest, the seed stage, when it was just workouts in a park. You were so supportive. And that separates you from a lot of my closest friends, who they're all behind me now. But in the early days, it takes a special kind of person to be really, really supportive and encouraging, when someone's at the very earliest stages. So that dinner was awesome. It was an insane networking opportunity, but just the kind of guy you are and how supportive you've been to me.
Wow,
it's a
man.
cool story about
Thank
that.
you for saying all that.
Yeah.
That's really, really kind of
Dude, you remember that dinner?
Of course.
Everyone's talking about their yachts and this and that. And I'm like, dude, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
It was great. I loved it. And I loved it. But that's your network. You are this, you're young in your network. You rub shoulders and elbows with these crazy business tycoons. And so I know you're going to bring those guys on the show and talk about their stories. So I'm looking forward to tuning in.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the quotes that I absolutely love that you and I have talked about over the years is The Man in the Arena.
Yeah.
By Theodore Roosevelt. And I just think that, you are someone who just goes for it. You have been in the arena for the last few years, just pursuing your dreams. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so I've just been one of those people that's up in the stands, cheering you on and totally believing that you're going to achieve all the things that you've set out to build. And so for the audience that doesn't know Eddy, I mean, he's kind of downplaying who he is, but Eddy is just a stud of a human being. So really talented athlete, training to be an Olympian, to living in your car, being homeless per se, and then building a multi-million-dollar company with over 1,500 members. Eddy is the CEO and founder of Dominate, which is my favorite gym on the West Side.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. That's
of course. And so taking a step back, man, I want to give you kudos in how far you've come, because I know the journey has not been easy.
No, it really hasn't. And there was one thing that I'll just add to that list of sort of a quick play-by-play. There was a chapter in my life where I was an athlete, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. And then you went straight to the gym, which is now I have a fitness business, which is thankfully, gaining traction and becoming successful. But there was 10 years of in between of me being a serial entrepreneur and building company after company. I did various startups, close to a dozen companies that I worked with in varying capacities. I was a co-founder on maybe 3 or 4 of them, but I was kind of like this quintessential entrepreneur, just like clutching at straws, trying to find the next thing, like trying to get rich quick. And like, I was just such a stereotypical like 20 something in Silicon Beach, like trying to do the next tech company. And like, I was always grinding, hustling. And eventually I really found my calling and my passion and my purpose. And then that's when I started achieving the material success, which, you know, you say is dominate. So there's a lot of lessons I learned through that decade of, you know, like a lot of people are like, oh, overnight success, like dominate came out of nowhere. It's like, dude, I've been at this for 10 years. Like I've been doing
You've been grinding,
just grinding and doing so many different things.
And honestly, inspiring so many people in the process.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, thank you. So whatever you want to chat about, let's do it.
Well, let's start at the beginning, man. So like for the audience, like we've known each other since high school, right? Like what did that kid look like, that high schooler? I mean, I remember you. Like tell me about Eddy in high school.
I'd love to know what you remember, because I'm sure many of us as adults, we would all sort of echo what I'm about to say, which is like, you think back to the kid you were and you kind of cringe a little. You know, like,
I don't cringe when I think of you. I just think of this guy that was like full of life, like
cool.
could probably get any girl that he wanted, and was like training to be a professional athlete. Whether it was soccer, I remember you were trying to be like a professional soccer player or a professional triathlete.
Yeah, that's right. So I was a very outgoing, you know, kid, full of very passionate person, very you know, loved the social aspects of being a kid, and you know, and my house was the party house, like, you know, was really at the center of the community and loved people and laughter and having fun and all that. And that was one side of me. And then the other side of me was the athlete. And I did decide that I wanted to be a professional soccer player at a pretty young age. I was a very competitive soccer player, of course. I ended up leaving high school when I was 15 years old.
Yeah, I remember that. There was I just
dropped out. Yeah. And had the opportunity to go and explore that. Long story short, didn't work out, ended up pivoting into triathlon, did triathlon very seriously for like 4 or 5 years, and was sort of aspiring to become an Olympian in triathlon. And so that was my entire life up until I was like 20. I was an athlete.
Which is so unbelievably hard for anyone who's done triathlons. It's swimming, biking, running, and you have to be so disciplined, and you have to be so good at all 3 of those events. And you're constantly pushing your body physically, but you're also pushing your body mentally.
Yeah.
So it's a total grind.
Yeah, absolutely. My sort of athletic journey, I always talk about it and I reflect upon it because it really made me who I am. You know, sport and in particular endurance sport is really analogous to life. You learn so many lessons as you're striving to be excellent or striving to be an amazing athlete. You learn these lessons which carry over into other areas in life later on, right? So it's like learning that, hey, to achieve greatness, you have to put your head down and you have to grind and you have to sacrifice, and it's going to hurt. It's going to bring you pain. And you have to say no to all these other things that kids are doing. You have to say no to those things for extended periods, right? And then you have to be consistent, right? Just doing it for 6 weeks ain't going to cut it, right? Like try 6 years. Like, so you learn those lessons if you want to be an Olympian, right? You in any sport, but in endurance sport in particular, it requires such a level of discipline and commitment that you really begin to learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
Right. You get asked questions of yourself. Like, do you really want to be here? Do you really want to do this? Like, are you willing to endure what it really takes? And look, I didn't become an Olympian. I wasn't physically gifted enough, and we can talk about that as well. I'm too big. I was like 40 pounds bigger than the guys I was racing.
Yeah, you're I'm
a bigger
strong.
Guy. Right.
What are you weighing these days?
I'm like 215 now.
215. And what are you throwing up? Like you're probably like 315 on bench, like 350. Like you're moving some weight.
Yep. The goal this year is to hit 405. That's
405.
That's my goal. I think I can do it this year. I should have done it last year, but I had an injury.
You're a stud. Gosh, 405 on bench. That is.
It's
what is that?
4
plates?
4 plates.
445s.
4 plates. Yeah,
it's incredible.
But it's all relative, dude. There's guys who throw up 6. Like, you know, it's not about that. Like, I don't want to focus on that.
But going back to the endurance side, man. Like I discovered endurance sports later on in life, like within the last probably 5 to 10 years, and I would say. A lot of life is about having grit, and we've talked about that. Yep. You and I have talked about that a lot, and I've talked about that on this podcast. And one of the cool things I think about endurance sports or events is it takes having grit in order to complete them. And so if you are someone who has grit or you want to have more grit, leaning into these types of events, whether it's marathons, triathlons, swims, like you name it, but big, long bikes, like anything that has an endurance component, like it's going to work that part of your brain, which is going to help you have more grit, because that's like what endurance is it's all about like the grit.
100% nailed it. Yeah, it's all about becoming, as you challenge yourself physically, you learn how to become comfortable when you're actually uncomfortable. So your level, your threshold for what is comfortable keeps going up, 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 up.
Yeah. Navy SEALs talk about that actually.
Yeah.
That like what makes them Navy SEALs is being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I think that's exactly, gosh, you just hit it like right on the head. Like that's what endurance is.
Yeah.
Is like getting comfortable with being like, ugh, I don't like this, but I'm going to like change my perspective and I'm going to keep pushing through.
Precisely, yeah. And a second big lesson that endurance sport taught me over several years was humility. I think coming from, you were a ball sport guy, I know you were a big baseballer, and that was a huge part of your life for me, right? So as a ball sport athlete, you either win or you lose, right? So like every day you're either high in jubilation, like I won, I'm the man, or you lose and it's like, oh, well, good. But in endurance sport, you just lose. Right? There's a race.
Wait, what? What do you mean you just lose?
Well, let's just say you prepare like all year for the national, championships, right? There's 75 guys on the line. There's one winner. 74 guys are going home and they're not going to be the winner. So you're constantly losing. You lose more than you win, right? You very rarely win. There's people who go their entire lives without winning a big race, right? And so you're constantly reminded that you're not the best, someone's better than you. And even within the season, there's A races and B races. You can't peak your physical fitness. When endurance sport, you have to pick which races are your most important. So if my best or most important race is in July, I'm peaking in July. I might go to a race in May. I'm going to get my ass kicked by the guy who's peaking in May. So there's this lesson of humility where you're constantly losing. And also just really applying yourself to a task and coming up short, which was ultimately a lesson I learned as well. Like when I say I was all in, I was all in. Like I trained 40 hours a week. Like I had no social life. I was completely committed and devoted to this pursuit. And at like 20, 21 years old, it started to dawn on me like, bro, you don't have it. Like you're just not good enough. Like you can't, like I used to be this like idealistic kid. Like I'm just going to want it more than anyone. I'm just going to train harder than anyone. I'm just going to eat a better diet. I'm going to weigh everything I eat. I'm not going to see my friends. I'm going to be more hardcore than anyone. And I'm going to will myself, like this romantic idea that like you can just will yourself to this. You can't, like, I just wasn't good enough. And that was humiliating because I had been, for 4 or 5 years telling everyone I'm going to the Olympics. Like, I'm just going to, I didn't say that, but like, I was this idea of, this was my entire identity was wrapped up in this sport and this athlete. And then at 21 or 20, whatever it was, when I was like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Like I got to move on and do something else. That's humiliating, right? But the way you gain humility is by being humiliated. You have to be humiliated. That's where you learn humility. So that was another big lesson that endurance sport taught me was humility.
How did you come to that conclusion in your mind that you're like, this isn't for me?
There was two things. There was a forcing function in my life. So you know the story, but my family went through a really hard time financially when I was like, through my late teenage years, it got worse and worse. And then when I was like 20 years old, my parents were evicted from their home and they had a really rough patch. It was awful. And at the time, I was like right on the precipice of turning pro and going full time. And I had a bunch of sponsors and I was traveling around like training and racing. And I lost all motivation for training because I just realized like, dude, even if you fulfill your 100% potential in this sport, you'll still be middle of the pack. Like like I was not it. I was going to the Olympic Training Center and racing guys who were 3 years younger than me and were like kicking my ass. They're just 40 pounds lighter. Like these guys get off the bike and run 450s. Like I wasn't running. I couldn't run fast enough. I was too big. I was quite literally too big. So I just wasn't built for it. Right. And these other guys were. And I was like, okay, I can be middle of the pack, but I'm never going to be able to help my family being a middle of the pack triathlete. Like that's a journeyman. And nothing against guys who do that, but you just, you're signing up for a really hard career and there's not a lot of money. And so when my family went through that time, I was like, hey, maybe it's time for me to like stop racing and go and build a business and like actually contribute and like help my family. And that was a big, big motivating factor for me stopping racing. So, that's when I sort of came back to LA. I was in Australia, came back to LA and I started my first company, which was a tech startup. And I just went all in. I was just like, I'm going to take all of this determination and passion and hardcoreness and I'm going to rip it out of sport and I'm going to apply it to, being a businessman and I'm going to figure this out.
By the way, for the audience that doesn't know, Eddy, when he says hardcore, like he means hardcore. Like you were the type of guy, do you get up at like 3:30 or 4 a.m. every morning?
I've been waking up at 3. Yeah, I get up at 3.
And then you're in the gym by what time?
3:45.
3:45 training for an hour, 2 hours?
2 hours.
And then running the business. And so when he says he's going hardcore, like this is not like getting up at like 8 and working for 8 hours a day. This is probably working 20 hours out of 24 hours in a day.
Yes, that's all true. But I see a lot of this, like this myth being perpetuated that you have to be this way if you want to be successful. I have plenty of friends who are far more materially successful than me, and they like to stay up until 2 and sleep in. So there's different ways of doing it. There's different ways of getting there. I choose this lifestyle because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm not waking up at 3 going, God damn, I got to get to the gym. Like, no, dude, I spring out of bed. I'm like, I get to go to the gym. I love fitness. It's what I love. It's not, I'm not gaming myself. I'm not trying to be hardcore. It's just, this is who I am. Like, I've always been an early riser. Even when I was a kid, like I'd wake up at 5 a.m. I'd be bouncing off the walls. I'm like, when's everyone getting up? Like the day's getting started. So I don't, people might hear me and be like, oh, well, what, do I have to do that? If I want to build a business, I have to wake up at 3? No, dude, not at all. That's just how I choose to live life. So I wake up early, I go to the gym. I built my own gym, so it's a dream come true for me to go there and work out before anyone gets there, because I love to have the whole gym to myself. I blast my own music. Yeah. Like it's a real moment for me to it's just the most enjoyable part of my day. And then, work starts. Yeah. But, I start early, I finish early. Like you might be working until 10 p.m. I'm in bed by 7. So,
You're very disciplined in that regard. But let's go back to the early 20s. You starting this tech company and you're like, I went hardcore. I went all in on this tech company in my early 20s.
All in, bro. I was
just trying for the audience, for them to realize when you say hardcore, like it's hardcore.
Yeah.
You're going after it.
I think that
you're pursuing your dreams in a way that, in my opinion, is inspirational and admirable.
Thank you, Sean.
Whatever you do.
I appreciate you saying that.
Super cool to be like watching you.
There's another side to that. That's my personality. I'm an extreme person.
Yeah.
Right. Even like we met in like, I might have been in like 9th grade when we first met. Even back then, you can ask like all of our friends, like they'll be like, yeah, he was a very extreme person.
Yeah, you've
like,
always been very extreme. By the way, I love those types of people.
Yeah,
like,
in the best ways.
They're
but
a little
also,
mad. You're in
the worst ways. Yeah.
Maybe in the best ways too.
In the best ways and the worst ways. I'm, for better or for worse, I'm a very extreme person. I'm someone who figured out who I am, and I'm proud of who I am, and I'm happy. I'm okay with who I am. But I've realized this concept of balance, by most people's definition, it's just not something that interests me, and it's not something that I aspire to achieve. I'm fine with being my own version of balanced, which is different from your version of balanced.
Yeah.
Right. So I have ways of achieving balance, and I have balance in my own, by my own definition. But most people would look at me and be like, dude, what? Like you wake up at 3, you don't see friends, like you don't go out and enjoy all this other stuff. Like,
Yeah. But the cool thing about that is like, you're choosing that life.
Yeah.
To your point, like that's balance for you. Maybe that's not balance for me, or maybe that's not balance for some of the other people here that are part of this amazing team. That are helping us with this podcast, Tanner and Mark.
Yeah.
But it works for you.
It works for me. Yeah. I've figured out, I think it's important as you sort of mature, like through your 20s, kind of figure out who you are. And then by the time you get to your 30s, hopefully you're figuring it out. Like I just know where I'm at, and I know I'm on my path. Like I've found my path. I know how, my way of living makes sense for me.
Totally. So going back to your 20s, starting that tech company, because I want to get to, there's such good like meat in this story, right? Of like starting these tech companies and not working out, you living in a car, right? And then starting Dominate. So this was the first kind of pivot for you where you're like, all right, I'm going all in on being a professional athlete.
It didn't work out.
It didn't work out. There was some things that happened to you that were maybe outside of your control, and you're like, okay, this is not the path that I'm going to be taking in life. I'm going to build a business. Okay, so what was that tech company?
The first one was called Time Bomb. We rebranded it to Timeogram, but it was basically a tool for social media managers and small business owners to manage their social media from one place. So this is like pre-Hootsuite, pre-Buffer. This was like a novel thing back in like, was it 2013, 2014, something like that? And it was like, we built the world's first tool that enabled people to schedule posts to Instagram, right? So you could log in on a Sunday afternoon, schedule all of your posts for the week with one click, schedule it, right? Upload the content, write a caption, boom, it's done. And that's like, by the way, that's like nothing special these days. There's many of these, but back then that was like a new thing, and everyone was like, wow, this is fantastic. So we launched this thing on Product Hunt. We had like tens of thousands of people like signing up, wanting to use it. And like this whole thing took off, and like, we didn't have a clue what we were doing. Like I was so naive, and just, it was actually honestly a huge missed opportunity looking back. Because if I had known what I know now, and if I had been as mature and as sort of well equipped as I am now, I could have actually monetized that and made some serious success out of it. But that's, I didn't go to college. I dropped out of high school and I skipped college. So I had to, trial by fire, the school of hard knocks. Like I had to learn these lessons by just getting out there and trying stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was, an exciting time in my life, but that one sort of fizzled out. And then we did another photo sharing app that was a shopping play. So you could basically tag the photo with like the fashion items in the photos and people could shop the photos. You remember Fashion Tap?
Yeah.
That was another one that was really exciting. And I did so many other things in between those and just basically worked in varying capacities with all different kinds of tech startups. Mostly consumer stuff. I found my niche as like an ops guy, a sales guy, right? A business guy. I wasn't technical per se. Did a little bit of product management, but I don't it's not worth my time to sit and code. Like I'd have to go back to the beginning and learn how to do that. So worked in tech for like a decade and kind of cut my teeth on tech startups. And then to fast forward to when I was maybe 25, 26, there was one big one that kind of seemed like it was going to be really financially successful, didn't work out. And then I had a real moment of like consternation and like frustration in my life where I was like, I'm 26 now. Like I said I was gonna, start a business and buy my parents a house when I was 21. It's fucking 6 years ago. Like what am I doing? And so I was so frustrated and so down on myself, Sean. And I'm drilling down on this because I know so many people can relate to this feeling of feeling lost, feeling frustrated with yourself, feeling like you've let yourself or your loved ones down, feeling like you're not on the right path, or feeling like you keep doing all the right things and showing up and checking all the boxes, but just nothing's working. And the one moment of wisdom that I had, and the one thing that the best decision I ever made in my life was stop trying to do all these things, go inward and ask yourself, who are you and what are you passionate about, right? And if you knew that the next startup that you were going to start was going to go for 10 years and then fail, what would you choose to do, right? Because it was like, stop just clutching at straws and trying to get rich quick. Start asking yourself, you get one life. What do you want to spend this life doing? What do you love? What truly lights you up? And what are you passionate about? And I had that conversation with myself and it was immediately obvious. It was like fitness. I'm obsessed with fitness. Like all I do is, even at that age, at 26, when I was like doing all these startups, dude, I was like living out of my car. It was a beat up old Escalade that I was living out of. And I would go to Equinox for like 4.5 hours on Saturday and stuff. Like I would go in, there's a 2-hour parking validation thing. So you go in for 2 hours. I would like finish my first like strength sets, get back in the car, pull out, pull back in, go back in. The guy on the desk is like, is this kid serious? I'm back in there. I could put on a new shirt because the old one was so sweaty. Like get on the treadmill, start running it, ripping, right? Like 6-minute miles, like ex-pro athlete. And everyone's like, who is this kid? And I was just, the point being, I'm passionate about fitness. If you give me $1 billion and say you can just spend the next 80 years doing whatever you want, bro, I'm going to swim long distances, bike hard, run on the trails, and lift heavy weights. That's what I love to do, that's right? Awesome. And then spend time with my friends and loved ones and, surrounded by love and laughter and, So, I was like, okay, I'm passionate about fitness. So let's stop messing with all this tech stuff and all this other stuff. Let's just do something with fitness.
Going back to that, Eddie, I have a quick question for you. So what did you do to like look inward? Did you journal about it? Did you go for a walk? Did you have conversations with
good question.
Mentors?
Dude, I actually have an answer. So my friend, and by the way, obviously I'm a massive athlete, so it's not like I'm a big smoker, like I don't smoke. But at the time, I had a very close friend, a guy who used to date my sister, and he and his brother had started a weed farm up in Oregon. And so this startup fell apart, and I was really just down in the dumps. And I'm like, I think I was talking to him, and he said, bro, like, we need someone to help us like work the land. Like it's manual labor. We're out there in the field, like doing all this work. Do you want to come and help us? And I was like so lost and just so over it. I was like, I'm getting out of LA, bro. I'm going to the forest. Like I'm going to Oregon. So I go up to Oregon, right? And I'm living in this log cabin out in the fucking woods of Oregon. And I'm like, his name's Corey, me and Corey and his brother Josh, we're like working the land. And I'm sleeping in this like shack at night out the back. And I started listening to audiobook, The Power of Now. I swear to God, that was really transformative. So listening to that, plus having this separation from this crazy go-getter world, like I was in it. When I was in the tech world, like, I mean, you still do this, but I was going to every event. I was networking. I was hustling. And so I was just like going a million miles per hour and nothing was working. So instead, I went to Oregon, I slowed down and I just started working the land with the boys, listening to The Power Now, and I literally went for walks. Like I would go for a walk every hour. And there was a gym actually in town. I would get up at 4, drive, like always, this is a constant theme in my life. Get up at 4, get in the car, drive to the gym, work out for 2 hours, come back, work the land, and then listen to The Power of Now and go for a walk. And I was there for a few months, and that was when this epiphany happened, where it was like, dude, I'm going to go back to LA, but this time I'm going to do something that I love, and I'm going to start with fitness. And I'm just going to do something really basic and simple, start with personal training and go from there. And You know the story. I started with personal training. It took off. Built a meal prep business. It took off. I started outdoor workouts with Dominate. It took off, and I rolled them all up, and it became Dominate, which is, to your point, we're not, I know, Sean, you're going to have people on this podcast who are like titans of industry. Like, I'm not there yet. We're just getting started. But what I can say is, look, I'm doing what I love. I'm someone who's overcome a lot of hard shit, and I'm doing what I really, really love. And it's a multi-7-figure business. Like, it's a multi-million-dollar, low single-digit millions, which is like, it's the first level, right? But it's still, as someone who tried for many, many years and could barely get any breaks, like, I'm someone who truly appreciates this moment, right?
Yeah,
like,
you should
I
be
will
super
never.
proud.
Yeah, I am, and I really encourage other people now, because it's like, look, I don't know how to get to 100 million, but I know how to get to 1-2 million. Like, let me show you what worked for me, right? And the most important part about my story, Sean, it's not about the success and the money. It's about, it's not even that much. It's about doing what you love, right? I've found a path that I'm really excited about. I get up every day and I'm excited to go to work. I love what I do. I love the people I work with. I get to help people, right? So that's the takeaway from my story, is like, okay, the transformative thing that I did was going inside and asking myself, what am I really excited about? And that takes a lot of courage, because a lot of people are on a path that they're not excited about, and they're doing things that don't really vibe with what they really care about and what they love. And I really want to, those are the people I hope to sort of get through to, because I know just how gratifying it is when you really go, when you have the courage to do what you love and chase your passion, and start small. It can be a side project at first, right? But I really encourage people to do that, especially if you feel lost or you feel unhappy with your path that you're on.
Well, that is like so incredible. But I would also add to that you and I, about a year to 2 years ago, before you opened up the gym in Santa Monica, we went to the city council meeting in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And we were trying to convince them to give you a building in Santa Monica. And I was there, and one of Mark was there, your chief marketing officer.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. Shout out to him.
Shout out, Mark.
And you brought all of these like handwritten notes from people that had gone to Dominate, right? That had done the outdoor workouts, and how Dominate had changed their life, like how they felt about themselves, but more importantly, like the community that they were a part of, being a part of Dominate. And so I think like, you are pursuing your dream. To anyone out there, like, you're leaning into like what makes you you, and you're going after it. But I would also say that you've chosen something that you're making people healthier, you're making them happier, and you're like building community. Yeah,
100%. You nailed it. Yeah, no, that's a huge part of the story. Is I found a way, the most gratifying thing about what I do is that we get to serve others and help other people.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, if people can, somehow find a way to build a career and on the intersection of something that you're excited about, but also where you get to add like value to other people's lives or serve them in some way, that's a really magical sweet spot that will keep you fueled up and excited for a long career. So just hopping back on what you said, there are so many stories, Sean. Like, people look at Dominate now and they're like, oh, it came out of nowhere, this overnight success. Like, no, dude.
No.
People have no idea what it took
by
us
the way,
to get.
And that's what I want to get into, because you kind of skipped over it. Like, let's talk about you living in your like car.
Yeah.
Did you live in your car for like 6 months, a year?
Yeah, no, all up, it was longer than a year.
And this is when you were doing personal training, right?
Yeah. It's a long story. So when my parents first lost their home, we had this family SUV. It was a Cadillac Escalade, and it was pretty beat up. It was like 10 years old at this point. It had like hundreds of thousands of miles on it. But I took that car, and then initially lived with a few friends. I had a buddy who was quite well off, so he gave me like a sweet deal on rent, and I lived with him. You remember Dylan and Nick? Mm-hmm. So lived there, and then that kind of that sort of went on for a few months, and eventually wanted to get down to the west side and start my personal training and whatnot. And just said, I'm just going to live in my car because the rent's too expensive, right? So I actually had personal training income, Sean. So I could have technically, found a studio for like a couple, $2,000. It's pretty expensive down in West LA. But I was like, I have all this credit card debt, and I just want to lock in and just focus. And I'm going to sleep in this car for as long as it takes for me to pay off all this debt. And I'm just going to be 100% apply myself to the task. And I'm glad I did that. It was really great. So literally lived in a car. That was really hard. Now I was a member at Equinox. So people are like, wait, you were homeless, but you went to Equinox? Again, priorities. Like, Equinox was important. I was there for 4 hours a day training. I do 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, training every day, nonstop, 7 days. And so I would shower there, and I had the amenities and the access to the showers and whatnot. But yeah, every night I would just find a flat street, which, by the way, is the hardest part. Like, most streets are kind of off. You don't realize, but finding a flat street is So I find a flat street, and I had a few spots around the town that I like to park. And yeah, I slept in the back of my car for a very long time. And then eventually got rid of the car, upgraded to a van, because remember I started Dominate and I had all the weights in the back. And I had a single...
By the way, at this point, Dominate is it out? You don't have a facility on Main Street.
Yeah.
It's just on the boardwalk in Santa Monica. It's just like grass field, and you're running all the classes.
That's right. So I had
out of that area.
I was flat broke when I started my Dominate. What's now, a fast growing gym, and it's a beautiful big box gym, like, 15,000 square feet. Like it's gorgeous. It's like a boutique Equinox.
Yeah.
But when I started, I had nothing, right? It was just an idea and a vision. So I was like, okay, how am I going to build like the next Equinox? I've got no money. So I started with mates, like friends, right? Friends, you get a few friends who need help with their fitness and their diet, and you text them and you offer them, hey, I'll train you for $50 a pop, and you get the ball rolling, and then it's friends of friends, and then you get more referrals. And so I grew my personal training business organically. And then, yes, to your point, that's when I saved. I was living in my car, and then I saved up enough to buy a van, got rid of the car, bought a van, started living in the back of the van, which is a little bit more comfortable, but still technically living in a car.
With all the fitness equipment.
All the equipment. Yeah. Well, I slowly bought like a couple pairs of dumbbells this week, and then a few kettlebells next week, and then the fit bars, and then the Bosu balls. And like eventually there was barely enough space for me to sleep in it. Started doing these workouts out in the park, because I realized that I love people. I love community. I love making people laugh. I love the fun element of group fitness. So I was like, hey, I can do my personal training Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, I'll go out to the park down by the beach, and I'll do these really awesome, fun outdoor, like you call them a boot camp, but it was like, you remember, like it was a full send. Like we'd get there early, we'd set up the whole thing. There'd be stations everywhere. There'd be whiteboards, there'd be timers, clocks, music. Like people would come and be like, damn, this guy's really putting it on. And I would do that.
It was also like social hour, because you would have so much fun working out with people.
Yeah.
And like, it was awesome.
It was, thank you. And again, bro, going back to what I said at the beginning, you were one of the first friends who put their hands up and said, I'm coming. I'll be there, and I'm bringing people. And you did, and you brought friends. And like, dude, you don't know how much that meant to me at that time. Like that meant so much to me. But look, the first time I did it, I remember being like, hey guys, we're going to have this massive outdoor workout. It's going to be sick. And one person showed up, right? The next week, 2 people showed up. The third week, maybe it was like 5 or 6 people. And then it was slowly. And then by like 6 months in, I had like 200 people coming out on a Saturday morning. Like this thing was popping, and it was so fun. And that's the what started Dominate. So we grew this community of outdoor workouts, and it was throughout 2020 all the way through 2021. We had like 500 members, like built this business and this brand and this community, started doing social events. And then eventually it was like, okay, we've got the resources we need to go and open a gym. Let's jump from outdoor to indoor, and let's go and build something that's going to be like an Equinox, like something really beautiful. And that's when you talk about the city. We had to go into the city council, and there were all these things and roadblocks I had to overcome. And there are so many little challenges throughout the entrepreneurial journey that we don't have time to talk about all of them, but they never stop. It's just never. So you have to be relentless. You have to be so just relentless is the best word. You have to endure all this adversity. Dominate, grew the community, launched the indoor gym, and now we have Dominate today, which is, like
1,500 members.
Yeah, just about. We're about to cross 1,500. Yeah.
Plans of expanding. It's
great.
great.
We're very excited. Yeah, it's been a crazy journey to get to where we are, but hopefully we're just at the beginning.
You are definitely just at the beginning, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that sticks out to me about you, and I hope the audience picks up on this, is like you're just relentless, man. Like living in a van, starting these classes, 1 or 2 people showing up, like you just kept going.
You have to.
Right? That endurance, right? That endurance that you built as a kid, and then bringing that same mindset into this fitness concept, this fitness company.
Yeah. You have to have grit, to your point. You have to be relentless. And then another thing I'll say is something that's really served me well is from a very young age, I've been a very individual person and very comfortable in my own skin. And I didn't care too much about what others thought.
Dude, I want to talk about that, because that's like one of my favorite things about you. Yeah. And before we get into that, so going back to this endurance piece, I'm reading Ernst Shackleton's book, Endurance.
Okay. Yeah.
And he basically, like, it's an epic biography about him going through the Arctic.
Yeah. I remember
One of his sayings, his family sayings, is "Through endurance, I will conquer." And I think about you when I read that quote. I was like, wow, through endurance, I will conquer, and that was like his mindset.
Yeah.
And I'm only like a few chapters in, but it's already like epic.
Yeah. I know the story. I actually haven't finished the book, but I do know the whole story.
You do. So far, it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's like cool. Like how important, like if you're not someone who has that grit, right? Like as Eddy was talking about, and I've experienced this myself as well, is lean into things like endurance or certain things in your life where you can kind of build grit. Cause like it's something that you can absolutely build. Some people have it more than others, but it's definitely something that like you can build over time. And then I'd also tell you, like, consider hanging around people. Like I know when I hang out with you, like I find myself like becoming more gritty, right? Because like you are the people you hang out with to a certain degree. And so like you're someone who embodies like endurance, grit, like you're just like relentless. But the other aspect of you that I just so appreciate is like you were unapologetically yourself.
Yeah.
Like you're who you are. Like you're gonna, at 5 a.m. people are gonna show up and you'll be like, "What's up, legend?"
You have
like,
to be.
You are who you are. Like in front of a crowd of 1,000 people or in a one-on-one solo like this. And so I think that's like super cool, and I think that's also very unique.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Sean. It's a wonderful compliment. And I'll just in order to sort of make it valuable for the listener, like if anyone out there is thinking of starting their own thing or taking a new path and pivoting, so to speak, in their life, that requires a lot of courage. And it can be really, really awkward and difficult for people to change, to step into a new identity or to take a new direction in your career or whatever, because there's so much external pressure. Most of it's not actually there. It's a figment of your imagination. But even me at 26, going from being the tech entrepreneur to being the fitness guy, that was difficult for me to do that. And it's like, looking back, it was like, why was that difficult? It's just a simple, obvious decision that you should have made. But I know there's a lot of people potentially listening to this who want to do something, but they're scared what others will think. They're scared to post about what they really think, or they're scared to say what they really think, or they're scared to be who they really want to be, or they're scared to work on that project that they want to work on because they're worried about what other people might perceive. And that is a real tragedy, and it's something that plagues us all.
Yeah.
But it's really important to work. It's like a muscle that you work in the gym and it gets stronger, right? Being unapologetically yourself and being comfortable with who you are and just being true to what you really want to say, do, be. That is a muscle that if you flex it enough, you'll get comfortable, and you'll just really, that whole idea of, being consistent with,
posting.
If
you're like concerned about what people are going to think, and it's like, all right, you know what? I got to get over myself.
Just do it.
And I just got to start putting myself out there.
Just do it, man.
And like, gosh, it's so true, man.
Yeah.
It's so true. And like, that's a hard one.
It's a really hard one for a lot of people.
We're as humans, we're very concerned about what people think. And so it is a superpower if you're like, I don't really care. Like, and I think it's one of those things where everyone cares, but you just get better at like compartmentalizing it. And the more you do it, I think like the more you're like, all right, this just becomes a part of my identity, and it's a habit now where like I'm not overthinking it.
Yeah, I think that when scary things are only scary until you cross that threshold, and then you realize, oh, there was nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Right? So like when I was scared to go out to be like, I'm doing fitness now and I want to help you get fit. Like, wait, I did it. And then guess what? All of my truest best friends shined through. Like, you started supporting me. You started, you were showing up. Like, maybe certain people fall away, but new people show up. And it's like, we have a mutual friend, George. He's always been so consistently supportive and encouraging, no matter what level of success I had or didn't have.
By the way, George has been on this podcast, and he started Hi-Yo. And so it's like, you see people like, right, that you're like, they're in the arena, they're going for it. And like some people, like you see that type of person, and it's just, what I've noticed is whenever I put myself out there and then people show up and are wanting to support me, it's like you never forget it. And that actually makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
And so like, to me, right, like I've had people in my life do that, and it's been very meaningful that like I saw you and I'm like, man, like I know this moves the needle. And so like I believe in Eddy, and I want to show up for Eddy because I know like the people that showed up for me made all the difference in the world. And you do that for me as well.
Precisely.
So
and I do my very best to pay that forward. You know?
You definitely do.
Like, even if it's just sharing a message like this, like just whoever's listening out there, like if you've got an itch to scratch, like go scratch it, and don't be sorry. Go give it a shot. It's okay. And
you got one life.
You got
like
one
why
life.
not? We got like 75 to 80 years here, and it's like you're gonna blink. And it's gonna be done. And gosh, someone that I love is this guy by the name of Jesse Itzler. I don't know if you know him, but I was just
I got the big calendar at home.
I have the big calendar as well. I followed him for the years, and I really love how he lives his life. But he was talking about something of I don't want to get to the end, right, when I'm 80 and be like, man, I lived 60% of the thing. I lived 60% of the life I wanted to live. He's like, I want to get to the end and be like, I did everything I wanted to do. At least at least I went for everything I wanted to go for. You know, and I thought that really resonated with me of that's cool, right? Because I think some of the biggest regrets people have at the end of their life is they didn't go for it.
100%.
And I think it's cool, right, to have you on this podcast and you talking about look, guys, I started multiple tech companies. It didn't work out. I was trying to be an Olympian or professional athlete. That didn't work out. Then I was all right, I'm gonna lean into my passion, which is fitness, and I'm gonna live in my car and then start this gym. It's that's cool. That's really inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah, no, for sure. I'm very, very grateful that obviously things are working out. But it was very difficult, Sean. I don't want to understate. I think a lot of my friends, I was very private in that part of my life. You don't go around being like, I'm homeless, guys, I'm struggling. You don't do that, right? When you're a young man, you keep it to yourself. So now it's fun to look back and talk about those hard times. But I can promise you, I didn't talk to anyone about it. It was very difficult, right? Coming up short time and time again. I use that word humiliating. It was humiliating, right? And it taught me humility about hey, bro, you might think you're all that. Maybe you're not.
How'd you get over that?
Again, that was the biggest test of all. When you really try lots of different things and nothing's working, the temptation is to start thinking maybe I should give up, or maybe I should just, go back to the drawing board, and maybe I should go back to college. Maybe I should just take a 9 to 5, stop trying to be an entrepreneur. But there was just something inside me that just this innate self-belief, I'm gonna find a way. And the greater the struggles and the adversity that you overcome, the greater the story. And I hated it, and it was so hard, Sean. But I remember, swear to God, I would sleep in the back of the van nights, and I would smile some nights. I swear to God, I would listen to David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, and I'd just turn it up and fall asleep in the back. And
I love that book.
And I'd be smiling, thinking one day I'm gonna look back at this, I'm gonna laugh so hard, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm doing it. I'm all in. Let's go.
Yeah.
So I was always very driven. I was always very motivated. I was always had a lot of self-belief and conviction that, hey, maybe the last 10 things didn't work out, but the 11th thing, that's going to be the one. And I always had that optimism. And that's a common thread amongst entrepreneurs, because you have to be optimistic, because you're going to lose more than you win, and you're going to have setbacks. You have to be just insanely, almost delusionally optimistic, I'm grateful that I had that delusion, because, now we're finally getting somewhere. After so many years of hard times, really hard, Sean. This is a part of my life that I don't share with my friends a lot, but one day I'll really share all the things I went through. It was really dark. Failure is hard. Poverty is hard. Seeing friends achieve things, knowing that you're not even close. You've got years and years and years to it's hard. Especially now with social media, we're all constantly looking at people who have more than us. They have more status, they have more money, they have more leverage, they have more connections. And when you're poor, it's just, you think it's hard seeing people when you're poor, you feel like you have, dude, what are you gonna do? It's hard. It's really hard. You start doing the math on how many hours you have to work to pay, and it's how do you ever get ahead? It's really hard. So that was a tough chapter in my life, and I don't want to understate that. It wasn't a joke at the time. And that's something I don't talk with my friends a lot about.
If there's someone listening to this who's experiencing that right now, what advice do you think you'd give?
You have to, if someone's going through financial hardship or really adversity of any kind, block everything out. I blocked everything out. I just talked about social media and how damaging it can be to constantly be just looking at other people who have things you don't have and might not ever have. I stop looking. Do not look. It does not serve you any good. And I stopped going to any social events, even going to social events with some of our mutual friends. It was so hard for me, because it was they're doing this, or they have this, or they have that. And I was I have nothing. And it's so hard to be around people who have so much more than you and you have nothing. So I just blocked everyone out. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I just worked. All I did was work. I woke up, I trained, and then I would work on my tech startups all day long. And then I'd go on bus, restaurants, bar back, be a server, hustle hard on the weekends, doing double shifts, do brunch shifts straight into dinner, Saturday and Sunday, train hard. Like, it was really, really hard. I did that for years because I was just determined that, you know, if I hustle and grind now, I can kind of like get out of this situation. But look, it's hard. There's nothing you can say to someone to say, look, it's going to be easy and there's a hack. There's no hack. You got to put your head down. You got to grind. You got to be disciplined, right? Like you got to play the cards you're dealt. And if you're dealt a shitty hand, you can cry about it or you can get after it. You know, it's like, it doesn't do you any good to play victim and you know, think about, oh, poor me and I got so unlucky and why nothing's working. That doesn't serve you, right? Like, and a big thing I buy into is this concept that like whatever happens in your life is your fault. And it's kind of a brutal concept. It's something that I fully bought into at 25, 26. When I had all these failed startups and I had no money and I had credit card debt and I was in my 20s and I felt lost and I felt hopeless. Instead of being like, oh, poor me, I'm really trying and I'm really talented and nothing's working, I didn't think that way. I thought, hey, this is totally my fault. Everything that's gone wrong is entirely my fault. Because by adopting that mentality, it sounds really boring, sounds really brutal, but by adopting that mentality, you'll naturally develop a bias for action. Because if you start to buy into this concept that whatever happens in your future, your destiny is in your hands, then you will naturally start taking the actions to set you up for the destiny that you want.
Wow.
Right? So as opposed to being like, oh, whatever happens or doesn't happen, it's out of my control. If you actually say, no, that's not true. It's totally in my control. I can start taking actions, building habits, doing things now, which will lead to the destiny that I really want. And so I was very, very high agency, like, hey, I'm in control. I got this. Sure, a few things went wrong, but that's okay. The next one's going to be, you know, and so maintaining a positive attitude and staying optimistic, working hard, you know, never playing the victim. Like victim mentality is the most dangerous thing in the world. Anyone who's, you know, doesn't have the situation they want in their life and they start coming up with excuses for why, you know, it's not their fault, mate, they might be right, but believing that is not helping you get to where you want to go. Right? What's really going to help you close the gap between where you are now and where you want to be is adopting this mentality of, hey, I'm in control. Anything good is my fault. Anything bad is my fault. Let's go and make the good outcomes more likely by taking this set of actions. Right? So it's like you have to believe in your own ability to affect your outcomes. You have to buy into that. You have to fully buy into that, like a religion. You have to fully buy into this concept, you know, and I did. And it was like, hey, I'm not where I want to be at 26, but by 36, I'm going to be where I want to be, and it'll be my fault because I'm going to do everything I can, you know?
I feel that in you.
Yeah.
Like,
I still feel
that mindset that you have.
Yeah. Dude, I haven't forgotten how hard those years were. You know, I still think about them often. You know, people like, even now people are like, oh, let's go take this trip. Let's go do this thing. I'm like, bro, I'm just getting started. I'm not going anywhere, bro. Like, I'm just like, people like thinking like, you know, it's over or something. So, you know, but that's the mentality is, hey, I got this. Like, I'm in control here. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And then the other thing I'll say, Sean, is, you know, I'm very passionate about fitness, and fitness has always been my common thread throughout my ups and downs in my life. And fitness was always there for me. And so certain periods of my life, maybe I was less social and I was a bit of a monk and I was a little bit of a recluse, but fitness was my best friend. And there's this great quote I love, which maybe sounds a little weird for someone who maybe, oh, you love fitness. So make suffering your best friend and you'll never be alone. Right? It's like on those years where nothing was working, I had all this credit card debt.
There's so many people that are going to hear that and they're going to be like, what the heck? Like, I don't want to make suffering my best friend, but
right.
I actually understand it.
Yeah, I love it.
Because if you can change your perspective on what's happening to you, then like your relationship with it is going to be different.
Correct. Yeah. If you can be, you want to basically get to a place, in my opinion, as a man, get to a place where you're completely needless. Yeah. You have no needs for anything external. Yeah. Right? Like there's literally nothing that I need anymore, Sean, because I can just go for a run and be so happy for 3 hours. Like literally get on my bike and ride 100 miles on a week. Like that's my perfect day. Get on my bike and just go suffer alone in the hills. Like I love fitness, so maybe it's a little different, but I love challenging myself. And I love this little game that I play with myself of, hey, here's this thing I'm going to try and achieve and I'm going to try and get after it and it's going to hurt, but I'm going to see if I can do it. And so my whole journey, even during the dark years and the hard times, it was like this challenge, this game. Hey, okay, I made $400 in tips this week. Can I maybe get to $450 next week? Let's see if I can stay an extra hour and I'm going to make sure I get to that guy. If he comes in that car again, I'm going to make sure, like every little thing was constantly trying to optimize. And that game is like, that's what really driven people, you find out, is a common thread, is they just love to win, right? Yeah. And this is why some people achieve success and they keep going. And it's like, dude, you did it, you made it, but they keep going, they keep going, they keep going.
Do you think
it's because
you fall into that category?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. And again, bro, I'm happy to achieve material success, of course. Like comfort and security is important, but it's more than that. I love what I do. I love the game. I love business. I love grinding. I love challenging myself. I love pushing myself. And of course, the other thing is I love serving people. And the bigger Dominate gets and the more successful it becomes, the more people I get to serve. And you said something earlier, which is just my favorite part of my whole story. Dude, I've got a drawer at home. I can pull it out and I've got a stack of cards like this. Mm-hmm. And I tell my team this all the time. Every team, all hands, every quarterly meeting, like I jump in and I say, hey guys, look, I'm so spoiled because I get all the praise and all of these messages, but let me just share them with you. And people write in and they say, this is what happens if you're a gym owner and if you're at the head of a community like Dominate, where there's thousands of people and, coming and going and people are losing weight and people are changing their habits and people are improving their self-worth and growing more confident. So people write me these letters, bro. It's like, hey, I just want to let you know, like I would have, definitely killed myself this year if it wasn't for Dominate.
Jeez.
Or like, yeah, I've got I've got a guy who's 80 years old. He's like, I just want to let you know, all my friends keep asking me what's going on with me because they say like, I've come into this next decade of my life with a new gusto. I'm moonwalking into the parties. They're all like, who's this guy?
That's awesome.
Dude, I've got women who say, if I just want to let you know, I would have turned to alcoholism after my breakup if it wasn't for Dominate. Like things like constantly I get these messages. And dude, it's one thing to make it by as a entrepreneur and to be able to, make money. But to get that second thing where it's like, hey, I'm really helping people here. This is incredible. That's the most motivating thing in the world. So yeah, even if Dominate becomes, a fantastic success here on the West Side, I'm hungry to go and build more. I want to go to Miami. I want to go to New York City. I want to go, maybe one day go overseas. Like I want to help as many people as I can.
Yeah.
It's not about, I want a private jet. And I don't care about that.
Yeah. I feel that for you, that you really want to serve.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about the victim mentality. Because I think
it's the worst thing I've seen. I see a lot of it.
I saw a lot of that over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's sometimes easy to fall into that, like basically being like, oh, I had no control over this and this is what's happening to me. But I think when you give yourself agency, like you said, where you're like, hey, I'm not going to play the victim card. And by the way, maybe you are the victim, right?
Yeah.
But like you said something that I think was like really profound. And I've actually heard George talk about this as well, our buddy, where it's like, yeah, you might be the victim, but playing the victim card, like how far is that going to get you?
Yeah, that's exactly the same message, right? It's not going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the set of things you can believe or buy into, which are going to increase the likelihood of your desired outcome?
Yeah.
Right? Believing that everything is in your control is going to lead to more likely that.
Yeah.
Believing everything is out of your control, like, why don't we all just, let the wind blow us where it's going to blow us then? It's like, that's not going to increase the likelihood that you get where you want to go.
And you have to be very careful about who you let into your inner circle because I think that mentality can start to leak in, right?
Totally.
Like a bad mindset with a friend or with a colleague or someone in your life. It's like, it's almost like a bad attitude on a team can affect the entire team.
Absolutely.
And I experienced that in sports, right? You talked about like I played baseball. It's like if you have a bad seed on the team and they start bringing that negative energy, it then starts affecting the rest of the team and it kind of builds like a cancer. And so
absolutely,
you might be someone who's like super positive. You have a bias to action, like you said. You're like taking agency in your life. But if there's people around you that are playing the victim card, like you need to be aware of that. You need to be very, very careful with who you let into your inner circle and who you surround yourself with.
100%. Yeah. On people in general, like there's this great, Naval Ravikant?
Yeah.
I always talk about him. I love him.
Freaking love Naval.
Yeah.
I would love to meet him at some point, actually.
Yeah. I actually have a few mutual friends. We could probably make it happen.
Really?
Yeah. So I heard him say something, I think it was on the Tim Ferriss podcast many years ago, and I thought it was such a wise insight. He said something like this. If someone's drowning, be very careful about like getting too close to them because they're instinctively going to grab you and pull you down. It takes a very, very strong, it takes like a professionally trained swimmer, like a really strong swimmer to actually help a drowning person, right? Like most people, unless you're very strong, and this is a metaphor for being very emotionally strong and very actually intellectually strong, you may be wiser just to kind of let them, right? Like this sounds terrible, but like going to help someone drown, they'll just pull you down.
Yeah.
Right? It's an analogy.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying it's actually what you do if you see someone drowning, but the point
No, I
is,
get what you're saying. That
is,
like they might bring you down with them.
Right.
So it's to what I was saying earlier. Like be careful who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something to that degree. And
throw them maybe like
yeah,
like a like a life
yeah.
It life jacket or something.
Right.
You know, maybe don't jump in.
Yeah. It's maybe that's not a perfect analogy for what we're talking about, but you know what I mean. And I totally hear you. I mean, look, I'm building a team now. We have 50 staff, and so we have a lot of turnover as well in a world like fitness, where there's a lot of part-time employees and there's a smaller core team of full-time employees. And so I've seen time and time again the certain qualities and red flags and whatnot that this.
Let's talk about that really quick. What red flags?
I mean, you just exactly what you said. It's a harsh way of phrasing it, but it's true. If someone has a bad attitude, or if they are not, the kind of character and the right values, they can be like a cancer inside the team, And sometimes you might think someone's like a great addition to the team. They're all that. And then you realize they don't have the right attitude or characteristics or habits, or they're just they're in a weird spot in their life.
Yeah.
And that can be really detrimental to the quality of the product and service is the end product. But before that is just the team morale. And, are we all lifting each other up, and are we encouraging one another to be our best selves? Or are we actually, pulling one another down and slowing the organization down?
Something I've always believed, Eddie, with teams is you really have control over three things. How you look when you show up, right? Like what you're wearing.
Dude, you always look 100%. I got to give it to you. I can do better on that.
I think you look great. I
knew we were going to be on camera, but usually I'm like, wearing my gym clothes. Like people always make comments.
By the way, the Dominant clothes are great. I have a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So how you look, like how you dress, right?
Yeah.
Your effort, you can control your effort.
Yeah.
And you can control your attitude. Those three things. It's like I think about that all the time. It's like you can control these three things. Everything else you might not be able to control, but I can control like the perspective and my attitude when I'm interacting with you or when things happen to me. Yeah. I can control how hard I'm going to go. Like how much effort am I going to put into this? And I can control how like I show up and what I'm dressed in.
Dude, you know what's so fun? I agree. Check. I love it. There's something so funny. I remember back to when we were kids, right? And you look at successful people and you want to know what's the thing. Like, hey, can you show me the way? Give me the wisdom. Like, what's the insight?
I used to ask people that all the time.
Right. And so now it's so funny, right? Because I thought it was like some tactical inside thing. But now when people ask me for advice, which now they're like, oh, but you're doing this thing, you're making this money, how are you doing it?
You're
and
like, don't be a victim.
Yeah. But it's like it's the timeless wisdom. Like, look, be disciplined, work hard.
Yes.
It's the boring stuff that
it's
actually
the cliche
is the most
stuff
important
that we've heard our entire
life. Like we sound
life.
like old grandpas.
Yeah, but it's true.
You got to be
There's something to it. It's like why they all these pieces of wisdom have.
Right. Don't be late. Be true to your word.
Timeless, yeah.
It's like, bro, that's the secret. It's like literally, I'm telling you, I have a set of friends who are crushing it in life, right? And then other friends who are still finding their way. And it's these people do these things.
Yes.
Right? And you just listed three of them, but we could go down the list.
We could totally go down the list. The other one that we haven't talked about that you kind of just touched on, which is something so important to me, and I know it's really important to you, is following through on the things you say you're going to do. Like kind of having that high do-say ratio, I think makes all the difference in the world. Like if you're telling someone you're going to show up at a certain time, or you're telling someone you're going to do it, like follow through.
Yes.
There's this quality that some of us have where like I call it the flaky millennial. Where it's like, hey, like, hey, Eddie, no, you never do this. But I'm talking about like I invite someone to an outing.
Sure.
And it's like, yeah, that sounds good. And it's like they're not really committing, right?
Right.
And they're kind of like going to see like what happens. Then they'll make a decision when the time
100%
comes.
100%. Yeah, I've gotten better actually on that particular thing. Is just not committing.
Yeah.
Getting better at saying no and knowing your limitations, right? I know that I only have a certain amount of time in the day, so I'm going to be better about that.
Yeah. That's one of the things I think for young entrepreneurs, like one of the biggest limiting factors I find with the people I talk with is distractions.
Yeah.
Like when you're young, you have all this energy, you have all these ideas, like you're going to be pulled in many different directions. You're going to have like, hey, I want to go do this, that, and this other thing, right? And then you're going to have people asking for your time, like wanting to get together, like wanting to pitch you on things. And it's like, you have to be very, very careful.
Yes.
Because we only have a certain amount of time. We only have a certain amount of energy.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very focused.
Yeah.
And very discerning with how you're spending your time.
I agree.
And not have distractions. And that's something I think you actually are very good at. Like you talked about this on the podcast, that you have to sacrifice and you have to have discipline, but you say no to a lot of things.
Yes.
Like, I was actually shocked you said yes to that dinner that I brought you to. Because I was like, the likelihood of Eddie saying yes to this and going to this like business dinner, I'm like, I don't know. It might be, I think we get served dinner at like 6:45, 7. I'm pretty sure that's what time he goes to bed.
Yeah. I do say no to most of those.
Yeah,
I don't remember the circumstances of that one, but obviously, you know, you truly are on the inner circle of people who have been there for me from day one. And I'll always do what I can to reciprocate that support. So, you inviting me to a dinner is different to someone else inviting me to a dinner, but you know, most of the time I do say no. I say no a lot. And I think it's important that people understand, like, when you're at the beginning of your career, you got to say yes to everything because you got to hustle, you got to find opportunities, you got to make it happen. But then as you become more successful, or maybe you get more assured in your path, then increasingly you do have to realize what's a distraction versus what is actually going to help you get closer to where you're going. And discerning those two things, to your point, is important. And so now I'm at a point where I know my path. I know, like, I've done the whole, I'll go to dinner. I'll get coffee. What you got? Like, I've done that. By
the way, that is so important early on in your career to be a yes man, because you just don't know what doors are going to open up.
Right.
But as you start to become, I don't want to use like more successful, but as you start to get more focused on your purpose, and you know the direction you want to take your life, then you probably need to get more, like, precise.
You have to,
on
100%.
100%.
Yeah, and I think just being more focused, you know, to your point, and being okay, you know, with just saying no. That's you nailed it.
Yeah, Eddie, we've been talking so much about kind of like mindset, like where the company is now. Like, I'm curious to know like what the future holds. Like, what's the vision of Dominate? You kind of mentioned opening up other locations.
Yeah.
But what are you trying to do with this brand?
Yeah. So to give you the quick sort of elevator pitch, 15-second version, we would love to build the next generation's Equinox, right? So we really want to build premium big box gyms in every major market in the United States, and then one day internationally. But more than that, Sean, it's not just about that. That's something we'd love to achieve. But what we're really focused on, and this sounds cheesy, but I'm telling you, like, it's legit, and this is a big part of our success, is really focusing on helping people become their best selves and live their best lives. And if we just, and I keep telling my team this every day, focus on that. And if we can just do that on a smaller scale here in Santa Monica, and then, you know, eventually in other locations, then the other stuff will happen. But we're really focused on just helping as many people as possible. And it goes back to those cards I get in that, right? I want to maximize the amount of people who we can really help become a better version of themselves through fitness, right? And so that's what we're focused on. And one day we hope to, you know, grow the company and be a large player in the space at scale. But, you know, it's just taking it one day at a time and helping as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think you said something that I've heard people talk about in the past is like, don't focus on the money, focus on helping people.
Yeah.
Focus on trying to impact people's lives in a positive way, because if you focus on that, the success will come.
Yeah, there's products and there's services. We are in the services business. We are providing service.
Yeah.
And if any other service provider out there, whether it's fitness or anything else, I implore you, focus on delivering. Deliver incredible value to your clients. And that is going to be the key that unlocks, right, the financial success. If you're focused on the financial
and that's something
success,
you guys obsess upon.
You have to.
Like, when I walk into a Dominate, it's like everyone is so positive. They know who you are. They're willing to go out of their way to help you. Like, there is a attention to detail, and there's an attention to hospitality in your gym that like I haven't seen in other places.
Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful compliment. And that's a testament to the team. I mean, there's incredible people. We have amazing people. That's the most important foundational sort of pillar of our success. So
how do you lead that, right? Because it starts at the top and then goes down. Like, how are you instilling that, or how are you encouraging that in your employees? How do you create your culture, I guess?
It starts with filtering, right? So it starts with the hiring process, making sure that you adequately filter people and vet them, and making sure that they're a fit, or at least they have the potential to become a fit. And then it's training and retraining, right? And I'm someone who's in the business. I'm not someone who's just like, you know, managing from afar. So right now at this stage of our, you know, this early stage of our business, I'm spending time one-on-one with every person. I'm making sure I'm talking to managers constantly, understanding how everyone's doing on a personal level, and then seeing those opportunities to train them and retrain them on how to go from good to great.
Yeah.
Right? Every little thing, like, attention to detail is a huge thing for us.
What questions are you asking when you're interviewing these people? Is there anything specific you're looking for?
You know, Sean, I think you and I have this in common. We're very good soft skills, like great people skills, as people would say. It's a crass way of putting it, but we have great people skills. So it's mostly intuition. It's a lot of just sitting and getting to know the human and understanding them and what makes them tick and what's their motivating, like underlying motivating, motivations. In the fitness space, for example, there's a lot of egos, a lot of, and so if I might sit with a really hotshot trainer and figure out that like really they just want 1 million Instagram followers and they want to be the man, that's fine if you can also be a good person. But if you're not actually truly someone who cares about helping people and really wants to help people, you're not a fit at Dominate. And so we don't, we filter a lot of people. I interview, 5 people for everyone maybe who gets to the next stage, and then it's the training and everything.
Yeah.
So, vetting and hiring the right people and making sure they're a fit on values for your organization is key. And then training and retraining and having a quick feedback loop, and then having actual systems in place to make sure that you identify problems and address them quickly so that they don't end up festering. And,
yeah, for sure. What's one of the questions I like to ask is, how do you let people go? Like,
well,
how do you fire? Because right, like talking about how we hire, but then I think equally as important is how you fire or ask people to move on.
Okay. It depends. I mean, it depends on, situations. Hopefully we don't have to do this too often. If we do realize early in the relationship that they're not a fit, we like to address that as quickly as possible. Because the longer it goes on, the more trouble potentially. So, look, it's transparency. I try, as someone who cares not so much about what people think and aspires to live according to a code of ethics, like I aspire to be very transparent, and I don't ever want to patronize people. I was pretty anti-authority as a kid. Like I didn't like being told a bunch of BS. I just want people to give it to me straight. I like being treated like an adult. And so I do the same thing for young people who work for me. Hey, here's where we're at. You showed up late for work once. I told you it couldn't happen again. I really love you, right? But this is not a place to learn. Dominate is where you come once you've already learned these lessons. You're going to have to go learn this somewhere else. I really want the best for you, young man, but like, this is not a company for you right now. I'm not your teacher. Like, if we want to be excellent, we're not a place for people to come and learn how to be a trainer. We're not someone to come and learn how to be a great host. We're hiring people who have already learned these lessons.
Yeah.
And so like, that's a simple one, like showing up for work late repeatedly, but stuff happens.
Yeah. For sure.
And so, I've really learned that when you identify red flags, just jump on it and address it quickly. Set a high standard, high bar for performance and hold people to it. And it starts as a leader with holding yourself to a high standard, right? If I'm telling people they have to act a certain way, but I'm not doing it myself, like it's not going to work. So my whole like leadership sort of philosophy begins with who am I, and leading from the front and setting an example. And so anyway, you asked how I fire people. I give it to them straight.
Yeah.
I sit them down and I talk to them like an adult. Look, man, you've got really great potential. I really love you and I want the best for you, but you're not going to be at Dominate anymore. Here's why. Wish you all the best. Take it as a learning lesson. Chin up. It's okay, young man. I was there once, right?
Yeah.
And I try to level with them. Hey, I was a punk once too. It's all good, bro. But like, learn from this and grow with it.
What's so interesting about that is like, you really, as you get older, you appreciate those conversations more and more. When there's someone on the other side who at the time you don't think they're looking out for your best interests, but like as you get older, you realize they were. And they were shooting you straight and being honest. And I think sometimes you need a little bit of that in life where someone's like, hey, like, I think you got a lot of potential, but it's not working here.
Yeah.
And I wish you well. And here's the things I recommend that you work on so you're in a better position at the next place. Yeah. Right. And I think tough love. Like I think tough love is actually like really, really important. And good on you, because I think sometimes like we don't give tough love because we're protecting ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
Or we care about what people think. And so we don't want people not to like us. And so it's hard for us to be very like straightforward and honest about that type of feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. You can save yourself a lot of trouble as a small business owner or as a startup founder by making sure that before you bring someone in and formalize their involvement, that they're the kind of person who you believe is coachable and able to receive feedback and be professional and be able to discern between this is like honest criticism to help me be better versus, and so you can save yourself a ton of trouble just by not hiring the wrong people.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so last question, Eddy. Eddy Roche, what are we? It's 2025. Eddy Roche at 2030. What does life look like?
I mean, hopefully more of the same. I hope that I'm fitter, stronger, happier, wiser. I hope I've got more proof to point to as I aim to, you know, coach the next generation of coaches and managers and people coming through the organization to help us grow this movement. Maybe I'll be back here laughing with you about
we'll have to do part 2.
Yeah.
This was awesome, man.
Yeah, just more of the same, Sean.
Yeah.
More of the same.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I wish that for you. I hope that for you. I have no doubt that that's going to be what life looks like in 5 years from now.
Thanks, brother.
And I so appreciate you being on the podcast. I so appreciate the relationship that you and I have had over the years. I mean, you have been someone who has been a huge inspiration in my life, and you've been a great friend. And I just like love seeing kind of where life has taken both of us. And like, I appreciate the relationship we've been able to create and the man that you are. And I don't think I'm alone in saying like you inspire a lot of people around you.
Thank you, brother. That's very kind of you. Thank you. And like, by the way, right back at you, mate. And I'm very excited to see where all the new stuff goes.
Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff.
Long time coming,
This is going to be a big year.
You've got a tremendous, if I didn't make it clear at the beginning, you've got one of the most impressive sort of like reputations and Rolodexes of anyone our age in the world. Like, like if anyone's going to start a podcast, it should be you. So I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, appreciate you. Well,
right on, bro.
Much love.
Yeah,
Thanks for being on.
Of course.
We appreciate you.
Right on.
Cool.